Many governments have sought to launch venture capital in their own countries by starting their own funds, and that's exactly what they did. And they generally lost all their money. I mean, governments have an awful record in venture capital. There are a few exceptions, but not many. All of that said, there are actually a lot of discussions going on right now, and I'm one of the strongest proponents of trying to do something of the kind that you mentioned. And I think there's some creative ways to do it. It probably doesn't make sense right now to go into all the complexities, but I think there are ways that Endeavor can financially support our companies without crowding out, and in ways that we all can benefit. And it's complex, there are multiple constituencies, but I think there's a way to do it, and happy to talk to you offline. But it's a good question, and it's one we've been thinking a lot about. Yeah. How does trust with an investor really work? How do venture capitalists add value to the companies they invest in? Okay, is that right? Okay. So in a lot of ways, I think certainly the money is helpful, but as I said, in the United States, the money has really become a commodity, and it's an interesting ecosystem to look at just because everything else matters a lot more. The primary way that I think venture capitalists can help companies is by helping them build out their team. The typical company that we see, that we invest in, has something very promising about it. They have a brilliant entrepreneur, they have a big idea, they might have one, maybe two early team members, but it's typically a race because it's so competitive. There's so much venture capital, there are a lot of sort of successful entrepreneurs, a lot of successful executives. So you raise venture capital in order to really run fast. And the way that we can help companies run the fastest is by helping them get an excellent team, if they're looking for a CEO, VP of sales, VP engineering, VP marketing. One of the things that I go out of my way to do is to know the very best people for any executive position in any sector that I invest in. So internet and software, if you were to ask me who are the top 18 internet VPs of engineering on the East Coast, I could tell you, and I would have an order. And the order would probably change over time as I get more data. And so when an entrepreneur comes to me and says, I'd love your help in building a company, the most, as I said, the best team almost always wins. Not always, but in a competitive market, the best team almost always wins. The most important thing we can do is help them build a great team. So at this company, this fashion company, so this company that was referenced earlier is this fast-growing fashion company. As a side note, my father recently said at a birthday party for me, if you had ever told me my son would make his fortune in fashion, I would have laughed out loud. But as it happens, this company that invested is a fashion company. When they started, they had 4 people, none of whom are on the senior executive team now. They started growing so fast. Their first year, they went from 0 to 37 million. And it was clear to us after the second week that we had to build a much more senior team. HR was much more complicated. Not only did we need a senior team, but we had to anticipate what the team's requirements would be 18 months from now. Because you wouldn't want to hire a team and then have the business outgrow them by the time they come up to speed. So I spent probably 3 months just flat out doing almost nothing else than helping them get the very best people. And in particular, helping them get a great CEO who we were competing against Oprah to get. Oprah wanted this woman to run her entire business, Harpo. And if I'd known, I didn't know that that was our competition. If I'd known that was our competition, I would have thought our chances were very small. But we went after her, we courted her, we did our best to convince her that this really was a big opportunity. And I think she's very happy she took the job now, but at the time we were maybe 15, 20 people, and we had visions of grandeur. And but it was not only the fact that I knew her, but the fact that we had a successful track record, and that provided some independent credibility to the company. And I think so for the rest of the team, I introduced the team to maybe half of the senior executives, and the others came in either through existing people or through recruiters. That's one way. A second way is introductions to customers. This is very important in particular for technology companies. There's an Endeavor company whose original selection panel I was on called Globit, from Argentina, and I am a huge fan of theirs, and I'm a supporter of theirs, and something that I do just to be helpful to them is introduce them to very big customers. I just introduced them to Gilt. I brought in the chairman of Gilt. We had a long talk with Globit. I hope they'll become a big customer of Gilt. I'm introducing them to investment banks in the United States who have huge budgets for outsourced software development. So that's a distinctive value that we can add. And again, because we've been successful in the past, people trust our judgment that if these guys must know what they're doing, and Globin is so big now that they've got their own track record, their own customer list. That's a second way. There are a variety of other ways, and just to quickly tick them off, I think introduction to partners, so a business development partner, a channel partner, help in an M&A process, particularly for first-time entrepreneurs. When you get a big offer, it's very exciting. But sometimes it's not the right thing to do to take the money. Maybe you've never made money before, and $10 million in your bank account is a big deal, and you don't want to risk that going away. But maybe the smart business move is actually not to take it. And there's some risk involved in that, but to go for 50 million in another year, and to be able to provide advice to entrepreneurs on how to think about those things, and to help them negotiate with these larger players. There's a certain pattern recognition, having worked with a lot of startups. This is what generally goes right, what goes wrong in M&A discussions, partner discussions. These are the things that I think you need to improve on based on patterns we've seen elsewhere. These are some of the biggest mistakes I've made as an investor. I don't want to see you make the same mistakes. So I think those are all areas where investors can add value. But again, you're asking an investor, so you should probably ask some entrepreneurs too. Any other questions?
Last question.
Last question. Yeah. That's a very good point. So for those who couldn't hear the question is, it seems that part of the success of a venture capitalist in the United States is being a good farmer in addition to a good hunter. And there are both, because sometimes you meet a team for the first time and it's like speed dating. You love them, but it's the deal goes very fast and you have to make a quick decision. But more often than not, it's establishing long-term relationships, really having people want to work with you because they know you well and their friends know you well. And I think I don't know the Brazilian venture capital market as well as some other people here, so my answer will be at a higher altitude than perhaps you'd ideally like. But I think in the early days of any venture capital market, there's a lot more hunting that goes along just because there's been less time to farm. But I think some farming has already happened within Endeavor. I mean, some of the venture capital firms have been started by former Endeavor entrepreneurs. And so there are relationships of trust that have already been built there. My strongest advice to anyone starting a venture capital firm is to listen to Alexander's question, and it's really one of the most important things that can make you successful, which is being a trusted farmer, being a long-term relationship manager, and having a network of relationships that will produce success for you. It works much better than hunting in the long run. Okay, so that's it. That's all we have time for. Thank you guys very much.